Oh, like the past one? Oh. I'm more curious to see like the quiz is going to. I think we just do it on Blackboard at the beginning of class. I just go back and have what is. The other thing was that stuff. Like where I would go to the opposite part of there. So I'm glad you're kind of correct.
All right, let's settle down and get started. So any questions from the last class? You all good? So today we're going to talk about like some theories and motivations why corporations want to do international trade. And then we're going to talk about some methods, how international trade can be done. And finally, we'll talk about valuation of MNCs. What are some specific factors we should consider while valuing MNCs? So basically, there are like three theories or three motivations that actually caused international trade. The first one is theory of competitive advantage. So when we talk about theory of competitive advantage, that means there are some countries who have some very specific skills. So if we talk about USA, what are some specific skills they have? They have better technologies, right? They do a lot of R&D and innovation always. But on the other hand, if we talk about food supplies, are we rely on some other countries? If we need food supplies, fresh produce, is USA rely on some other countries? Because there are some other countries who may have specific competitiveness in producing fresh produce or groceries, something like that, right? So when we talk about theory of competitive advantage, we have to be careful, like what are the key words? So the key thing of this theory is like countries have some specific skills. One country has one specific skills, the other country has some other specific skills. And that actually cause them or motivate them to international trade. Because US do not want to produce a lot of food supplies. They have to buy from outside. But they do a lot of R&D, they have a lot of technologies which they can sell outside. That cause export and import and international trade, right? So this is the major points of competitive advantage. If you have competitive advantage, you can sell your product and you have to buy some other product. The second theory is basically imperfect market theory. So if you think about the real world, there are a lot of frictions. There are a lot of frictions that actually cause your business, that actually impair your productions. If we think about what are the factors of production, so the factors of productions basically are capital and labor, right? You need your own money and you need some human skills for production, right? So if you think of the real world, there are some countries that have cheap labor. If you think about real world, there are some countries with a lot of capital, a lot of technologies, right? But do you think those factors of production are easily tradable? Wages in USA versus wages in small countries, do you think same? There should be cheap labor, right? Do you think those factors of production are transferable among US and other countries? Definitely not, right? Small countries do not have all of those technologies, all of those savings, money for investment, right? So as there are frictions in the real world, we need to trade. We need to trade. US may be beneficial if they can start some subsidiary in countries where they have cheap labors. And they can produce those goods from there. So the objective or the idea that's coming from imperfect market theory is that the global world, the real world, has frictions. And due to that, factors of production are not transferable. And that's why you need to do international trade. The final theory is basically product cycle theory. So before we talk about this theory, so if we want to fly, what are some big airlines producer in this world? Just tell me two names. No, they don't produce, they don't build the aircraft. American Airlines give you the service. Who build the aircraft? Boeing and one more. There are two big giants globally. Airbus, right? Two big giants, Boeing and Airbus. Now tell me the name of some corporations that actually give you the service, transportation service through airlines. Southwest. Do you know what they're operating? What is the aircraft they use? They mostly use Boeing, only Boeing. Someone else, US-based corporations that give you transportation service using Boeing. Give me some names, international names. Some international names. Yeah, airlines corporations. Delta, that's US. They use Airbus, they use Boeing, they use a lot of different things. International names outside of USA.
British Airways.
Yeah, British Airways. They are not based in US, right? They are not based in US, right? But they buy aircraft from whom? Boeing, right? So the product cycle theory says that when you start a business, you are able to satisfy the local demand, and now due to your product quality, you have reputation globally. And now global clients, global consumers need your product. And you're penetrating international market over time. That is the product cycle theory. Because your product has quality, you can produce more, international people need it. Although, another example which is not for business purpose, let's talk about COVID vaccine. This is not for business purpose. Who started producing first? Pfizer and Moderna. Do you know any other names, big names? J&J, all three US based. Any names from outside? Absolutely, with Oxford, right? These are the four big names, right? Although they are not for business purpose, but they started making it. It has quality, people to survive, and then they started selling overseas, right? So three theories that cause international trade. Either you have some specific skills, which someone does not have. Now you build your product efficiently and then sell. First of all. Second of all, a lot of resources are not transferable across countries. And that's why you need to trade among countries. And finally, if you can really build quality product, you can satisfy your demand. You can penetrate global market internationally. You can think of Toyota cars. So do you know which country Toyota based in? Where is the headquarters? Japan, right? But they're selling cars here in USA too, right? You can think of iPhone selling products anywhere in this world, right? Based in USA. So these are the three theories that are actually motivating for international trade. So what do you think about this type of approach? Which one seems correct? A? Why not A? So it's trying to talk about what? Non-transparent, right? Resources are not transparent. So this is based on imperfect market view, right? So they are not talking about some very specific skills or not product cycle, right? So the right answer is B. So now let's talk about what are some methods that firm can use for international trade. So if you talk about international trade only, the international trade only about export and import. If you sell your product overseas, or if you buy from overseas, that's international trade. But if you only do export and import, there are minimum risk because you are not investing outside. You are just buying or selling the goods. You don't need to put your own capital for that. Just buy and sell. You don't need to build any plant. You don't need to buy any company. Just put and import. So that is basically mostly international trade. How can you do that? Several different ways. We can only do licensing. So for international business, when you talk about licensing, that means we are only selling our technology for a fee. Most of the medication we use for health services have copyright or patent, right? If any corporations sell that formula, sell that patent outside, then the buyer can reproduce all those pills, all those prescription drugs using the formula only. That's it. If the corporations who have some specific softwares, technology, license, copyright, patent, only sell the patent for a fee, that's it. The corporations will not help in the production process, will do nothing. Just give you the formula how to produce for a fee. If the corporations do that, that is called licensing. No investment required, nothing required. If you look here, you don't need to transport goods, you don't need to help for anything. Just let the corporations know how to do the work. That's it. Sell the license, sell the copyright, sell the patents, and the formula for a fee. That is called licensing. Any questions? Another way to do international business is called franchising. So when you talk about franchise, it's basically all about letting them know the formula, helping them for sales, helping them for strategies, give them all of the support they need. Also, it may require investments. It may require for the corporations to provide some capital. That is called franchising. Any idea, an example of corporations that do franchising?
Nope.
Okay, McDonald's, what else? Anything else other than McDonald's?
Walmart.
Walmart do franchising or they build their own store? They build their own store, I think. You cannot franchise like from everyone, no. Walmart build their own store. Because that requires a huge capital, huge land. And if you go to like very expensive places in USA, you may not find a Walmart. Let's say Boulder, Colorado. You will hardly find a Walmart there because land are really, really expensive in Boulder, Colorado. All those food companies you see do franchising. McDonald's, Pizza Hut, Domino's. If you travel internationally, almost most of the countries have those food chains. So if any corporations help others by giving the formula how to work, helping for sales, putting capital, this is called franchising. But that doesn't mean every food chain does that. Do you know there is a corporation called Cheesecake Factory? They don't do franchising. They build their own store. But McDonald's, KFC, they do the franchising. You can buy the franchisee, you can build your own stores, but they will assist you for initial years. They may put capital and you can do the business. So out of those corporations, I think Chick-fil-A is the one that requires minimum capital to start a franchising. Very minimum. Question so far, franchising versus licensing.
Do this two at the same time.
Who?
Apple.
No, I don't.
Yeah, because we also like to sell all the stores. But even franchising.
We're going there. Good point. We'll go there. Let's give the example. Okay. Joint venture. What is a joint venture? If two corporations decided they will start a new business, they will merge, they will work together. That is called joint venture. That requires capital, that requires working together, and they can create a new company or they can just work together. Have you guys visited Barnes and Nobles? Maybe in Colombia or somewhere else? Did you see Starbucks in there? Why? You will almost find a Starbucks anywhere in this US inside the Barnes and Nobles. Almost. Only except, I believe, if it's not inside the school. If it's not inside the school, any outside place will almost find a Starbucks inside the Barnes and Nobles. Because of joint venture. Barnes and Nobles, Starbucks, they did not merge. Two different companies work together because of joint venture. So two different corporations in an agreement that they will work together will create a new corporations that is called joint venture. They share their technologies, their skills, their capital, and do their business. Let's talk about a real big joint ventures. Do we know these corporations? Any idea what they do? What else?
Like,
So they actually build vehicle, two-wheel, four-wheel vehicle, right? Motor vehicle. But I believe we don't know, let's see. We don't know these corporations, right? Definitely no way. Do you know these corporations? No, right? We don't know that, right? In 1986, there used to be a corporation. Let's see. They actually take it out. So there used to be corporations like Hero and Honda, it's a joint venture in 1986, which doesn't exist now. Because before 90s, there used to be rule by India. If any foreign companies want to do business in their country, it has to be a joint venture. What is the benefit? Honda is a global giant, lot of technologies, lot of skills. So if they do joint venture with existing domestic company, the domestic company gonna learn those technologies, those skills. After they learn, they got separated. Make sense? So when two different corporations use their own skills, technology, capital, start a new business, that is called joint ventures. Let's see. So going back. Questions so far? Licensing, franchise, or anything? Now, sometimes corporations can buy an existing company in a foreign country. So that is called acquisition of existing operations. If they buy some corporations in foreign countries and completely own it, so they have a new corporations in the foreign country. So now if the parent company gonna buy that, so that means they need investments. The parent company will decide all the strategies, all the actions, corporate policies, and the parent company gonna control that. So to reduce or to minimize any agency problems, the parent company is gonna do everything that's needed. But the problem of acquisition of existing operations in a foreign country is like, you need a lot of money. You have to put a lot of money. You can make a lot of losses there. Because you may not know the cultures or how to operate business in a foreign country. So that is the main issue, main risk. Else, the corporations can build a new foreign subsidiaries. So now coming back to Lina's point. Apple Store in China is basically owned by Apple Incorporation in USA. So they just build a subsidiary in China, like the way ExxonMobil has subsidiaries at least 5 or 6 countries outside of USA. So they build a foreign subsidiaries. So acquisition of a new operation or establishment of a new foreign subsidiaries basically work in the same way. How same? You have to put your own capital. You have to manage the business. You have to think of all the strategies. And if you make losses, you have to bear it. So they almost work in the same way, but the difference is if you acquire existing operations, you are just buying the operations and run. If you start a new subsidiary, you are starting everything from the beginning. That's the only difference. But in both cases, you are putting your capital, you are taking the risk, you are managing the operations, you are doing everything as a parent company. You have to think about the agency problems, everything, all the risk factors. But ideally, they look same. So, if we summarize different way of doing international business. So there are only 2 methods which are called international trade and licensing. That doesn't require any direct investment. That doesn't require you to put your own capital. But all else, require to put your capital and take more risk. When you're talking about international trade, you're only buying and selling, that's it. When you're talking about licensing, you are generating some fee by allowing some others to know your technology, copyright, or patent. But you are not putting your money, you are not telling him how to run the business, whatever. All else may require direct foreign investments, putting your capital. Questions so far? What do you think of this problem? What is licensing? B, provides the technology that's for free, right? No capital required, nothing else, right? Okay, let's talk about if we want to value an MNC, how we should do that. Before we talk about how to value an MNC, let's talk about very briefly about time value of money. So when you talk about value of a corporation, value of any asset, value of any security, what does it mean? What is the value of an asset? How can you calculate the estimate the value of an asset? In plain language, what is the value of an asset? If you have taken principal finance, you should have done that. If you have taken corporate finance, if you have taken investments, you should have done that multiple times. When you talk about value, what does it mean? No idea. Okay, let's say this is today, right? This is tomorrow, maybe 1 month later, 1 year later, right? So if we expect any cash flow in the future, there is a specific name in finance. If we expect any cash flow in the future, what is a specific name for this cash flow? Future value. Now, if we discount this cash flow back to today by the discount rate, if we discount our future cash flow back to today by the discount rate, what is the specific name for this one? Present value. So when we talk about value of any asset, value of any fund, we actually refer to present value. We actually refer to present value of all the expected cash flow. we actually refer to discounted value of all the expected cash flow. Same thing, same thing. So value of any corporation is the discounted value of all the expected cash flow. So if we are valuing any corporations in our native country, let's say USA, what should be the currency for the expected cash flow? Dollar, US dollar, right? So if we just discount that expected cash flow in US dollar in today, that is basically the value of the corporations we're talking about, right? But if we do business internationally, what is the difference? Are we expecting the cash flow to be in dollar or something else? Something else. So let's say we have an MNC and this is only work in USA. We have a corporations that only works in USA. And they're gonna generate at year one, $11,000. And the discount rate is 10%. If we use that formula, the value of the corporation is $10,000, right? But if we changed it to an MNC, from a local business to MNC, and if we are saying that the corporations outside of USA will generate 11,000 euro, not dollar, then how can we find the value of the corporations in US dollar? Just discount this. What do you have to do?
convert and then,
Absolutely. So if this is a corporation's generating cash flow outside of USA, in any currency other than dollar, we have to convert by the exchange rate. Right? So let's say the expected exchange rate of US to Euro is 1.2. Expected exchange rate at year one, US to Euro is 1.2. Be careful in exchange rate. If we say the exchange rate US to Euro is $1.2, that means each euro or $1.2. 1 euro is equivalent to $1.2 at year one. Right? If this is the situation, how can you find the value? Right? Make sense? Because 1 euro worth $1.2. So 11,000 times 1.2. $1,000. Make sense? That should be the value in dollar. Now let's do by yourself, assuming exchange rate is 1.3 versus 1.1, and tell me the answer and explanations. Do the same math, but assume year one, exchange rate 1.3 and 1.1 separately. Find the value and explain me what's going on. So how much you got as a value if the exchange rate is 1.1? Yeah. Huh? Yeah, absolutely. So 11,000 euro times 1.1 divided by 1.1, right? And for this one, how much you got if it's 1.3? How much? 13? Yeah, okay. So where our base was 12, right? Right? What is the interpretation? Why value is changed? why value got changed. Exchange rate. What happened with the exchange rate?
The value of the euro compared to the US dollar went up.
For which one? Which case?
The second one, the 1.3.
Okay. So this is called euro appreciates. Right? And what happens with this one? Euro weakens. So if you want to value and corporations that have also business outside in different currencies, you have to think about now two different factors. Cash flow, exchange rate. So on the domestic model, you only think about what? Cash flow, right? For the domestic model, if cash flow goes up, value goes up, cash flow goes down, value goes down. But on the international model or multinational model, you also have to account for the exchange rate. If your foreign currency appreciates, value will go up. If your foreign currency weakens or depreciates, what's going to happen? Value goes down, right? So now we have to identify what are the factors that can affect these two items. What are the risk factors in there? So this is the formula we have to use to find the value, right? We have to discount back after converting the cash flow in dollar. These are some factors that are going to affect your valuation. Economic conditions. If you are doing business outside, what does it mean? The value of your business will be affected by the economic conditions of the foreign country, right? If the foreign country's economy is going up, that means customers in the foreign countries have more purchase power. They will demand more of your product. That means you can expect more cash flows by doing business, right? And the reverse is also true. If the economic conditions of the foreign currency is not good, they will not demand a lot of your product. You'll expect lower cash flows. Political risk. There are like a lot of other countries, they have two different tax policies. If you can produce the same product locally, they will charge lower tax. If you export the product from outside, they will charge higher tax. In that conditions, people may not prefer the product exporting from outside, right? Right? Because that will be expensive, right? And also, there are some countries who actually impose more tax if the corporations have a subsidiary there. If they do that, that means you will have lower corporate income because you are paying more tax. If you have lower corporate income, that means you have lower cash flows, right? So economic conditions and political risk can affect your cash flows. And the final thing is exchange rate risk. Exchange rate will affect your value because the foreign currency you're generating, you have to convert back to your home currency. If the exchange rate of the foreign currency appreciates, that's good for you. Your farm value will go up. If the exchange rate of the foreign currency depreciates or weakens, that's not good for you. The farm value will go down. So when we think about the valuation of a MNC, we have to think about broadly these three different factors. These three different factors will either affect the cash flows or the exchange rate, the currency, and that can affect your valuation. This slides briefly explains what we just talked about. So let's say, due to the economy of the foreign currency, if your cash flow is less than the expected, your value will go down, right? You're expecting 11,000 euro, but the economic condition of the foreign currency, like the European currencies, are not there. So that means you'll be getting less than 11,000. The value will go down. For some reason, there are some political risks. They don't like you to penetrate in their business, in their country. They'll impose more tax. If they impose you more tax, you'll either have less sales because your products are expensive. Even if you have less sales or more sales, you may need to pay more income tax. That's going to lower your cash flows. So if the political risk is bad in the foreign currency, that means you'll have less cash flows. That's going to reduce your value again. And finally, the currency exchange rate risk. So these three factors can drop your fund valuation, right? Question so far. So if you're taking a principal of finance or investment class, these two factors is still in there, right? Because in investment class or principal or finance class, we talk about valuation of the domestic corporation. We have to think about the economy of the US. We have to think about the political issues about the US. Some corporations in the US have more political issues than some other corporations, right? Some government prefer traditional energy. Some government prefer renewable energy, right? Green energy, right? So due to that, they charge taxes differently. So these two factors are almost in there if you're valuing domestic corporations or MNCs. But the new factor that kicks in, exchange rate risk. Because that's going to affect your cash flow in your domestic currency, your valuation. Finally, uncertainty that affects cost of capital. So if there are like more risk, what do you think about cost of capital? If there are more uncertainty, what do you think? More risk, right? And they're gonna raise your cost of capital. So ultimately, this factor is affected similarly if you're valuing the domestic corporation. Your cash flows are almost affecting similarly if you're valuing the domestic corporations. And the only new factor is basically your exchange rate. Make sense? So I believe this is all about chapter 1. Yes, so we are kind of done today. If you have no questions, no confusions. You all good? And that's all for today. See you on Tuesday. Yes. You have no group members here? I can find you one group, yes. Just let me know your currency. What is